Welcome to Typebook. We are Chris and Rose, INTJ and INFJ, and we are cataloging a variety of people based on their Jungian psychological types and their MBTI four-letter abbreviations. Today we are taking a look at David Mitchell.
Who is a comedian.
Right. Before we get started, I just want to point out his face at this moment.
Yes.
ESFJs, if you study them, pretty much all of them that we've looked at, they have such an openness in their face, a childlike look. You can see the quote-unquote innocence or purity of the FE in their face. It's right there to see.
Yes. It's like he's about to say, I'm ready for you.
Yes.
Do your questions. Okay.
No, I don't know that it's that. I
Oh.
think it's more like, what are your questions? I can't wait to get this started.
Okay, well, perhaps
That's
I'd be
really
like,
what it is.
I'm ready. Do your questions. Okay.
What are we going to do with you? I don't know.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
David, welcome to Waterstones.
Thank you.
You are dropping truth bombs from the very opening of this book, where you make it very clear that King Arthur is just made up.
He is just made up. Yeah, it's pretty clear he's just made up. A lot of people talk about who, there must be something in it because people have talked about King Arthur. So there's so much written about King Arthur, so much, so surely that's based on something. But there's no evidence for anything. Obviously there were people alive at the time they claim one of those people was King Arthur. Mm-hmm. So you could say he's based on someone with a different name and an entirely different job description. But then, on what level is that existing? That's just someone different.
Yeah.
But obviously he's the ideal king. That's the point, and so that's why there's no need for him to be based on anyone real. The need was to have this ideal represented, this thing to hark back to, because through most of the period covered by my book, people they don't believe in the future. They don't believe in improvement. They believe in returning to a lost ideal. It's very Garden of Eden-y.
Yes.
Not that they're suggesting that King Arthur went around with his tackle out.
Well, no.
No.
But although
He could have been based on someone who did, a sort of nudist nutter. We call him King Arthur.
he's always like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. This, as you say, there is this sort of idea always of restoration, of going back to some great thing. And of course, we still live in an era where people talk about making America great again and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's an alluring idea, of course. But you do go through, I suppose, those early English kings. I'm saying English, of course, the idea of England didn't really exist back then. But there is still quite scant knowledge about them. We know bits about the Ethelreds and things like that, but it's still quite sparse information. But you make a really good point, which is that those early kings are basically successful bullies. It's about somebody saying, I'm in charge here, and running with it.
Yeah, well, nothing was written during the period after the Romans had gone until quite far into the Anglo-Saxon
let's stop.
era. Nothing's written down.
We said this guy was a comedian, didn't we?
Yes.
But here, he seems a bit more like a historian.
Yes.
This is like the Stephen Fry effect. Right? Where,
Yes.
he knows things about many things.
Well, he must be an NT then. Because apparently David Mitchell is an INTP. And Stephen Fry is an ENTP,
I think they said.
Right.
Yeah.
Because ESFJs can't possibly speak on this level of knowledge.
No. To me, though, this is SI. It's details, details, details. I'm an intelligent man. Where can I get more details? It's in the past.
Yes, and they seem to find their niche in this. Because we've seen several ESFJs now who love historical research. And it's not the actual battles and dates. They love the people of history. They're fascinated with it. We have another author that we've typed. We haven't made a video about her yet. She's another ESFJ. She's combed through pages and pages of research about people in history. She's fascinated with their stories. Seems like a similar thing's going on here with David Mitchell.
Yeah, they live and breathe this stuff. I mean, this guy, he even made like a comedy show, like point of view show, where he's essentially just himself, heightened to some, exaggerated to some degree. And, he's just constantly on about history, like, wow, then the Bismarck did this, and it was sunk in this date, and blah, 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 just facts, and, like, he just can't escape it.
Right, but it's interesting because that's the serious side of him. All this research and learning about historical figures. But then that childlikeness comes out in the joy of, wow, let's have fun with this now. Let's make comic sketches based around my knowledge and have fun with it.
Yes, I mean, yeah, he does in the comedy as like World War II reenactment and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, and I can see why it's interesting for an ESFJ because who was this guy? What did he do? How did he do it? Who am I? What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? That's, again, it's an ESFJ kind of thing to be very, what is the done thing?
Right.
What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? What's the best option for me? They're very like this in this way. They know what they want to do and they know what they like. And they're very rational in like everyday kind of stuff. 3, 2, 1, go.
So we don't know what's going on. We know there was a Roman Empire. We know that was written down. We know they built a lot of stuff, and then it started to collapse, and the legions went home, and that the people who were living in Britain then, who were now referred to as the Romano-British, and gradually morphed into being the Celts, they were, not very prepared for self-government.
Okay, stop.
And the Anglo-Saxon tribes started to...
I mean, I totally understand why someone might say he's got to be an NT.
Well, convince me because I don't.
Well, in terms of this, because again, I've done all this research, I'm into all this stuff, but just being interested in something doesn't mean you have to be an NT, But he did just get something wrong there. Because the Romano-British were after the Celts, which were previous to the Roman occupation as such. Sorry, David.
Thank you for that clarification.
That's probably
Great.
what he meant, though.
Yes.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
To arrive and took over. But they didn't take over in any organised way. By the middle of the Anglo-Saxon period, you've got sort of 7 or 8 kingdoms, sometimes referred to as the Anglo-Saxon heptarchy. But it wasn't like they came and set up 7 kingdoms and said, well, I'll have one here, and one day we can name counties after them. It coalesced into that. We don't know much about the process of that coalescing, but it was probably, I say in the book, it's more akin to how the selling of drugs is organised in the greater LA area than anything more sort of regal and organised. And yeah, there will have been bullies, and they pushed people over harder than other people pushed people over, so they started to be in charge, and then other more bullying regional bullies became in charge of the local bullies, and that gradually turned into kingdoms, and people sought protection from the local hard man, and that's protection in both the mafia sense and the general sense. And that's probably where English kingship came from. Obviously there were kings before, the Romans had kings, there are kings in the Bible, but our version of kingship came out of that. And then later, when the Anglo-Saxons had converted to Christianity, they started to use Christianity as a basis for kingship. They started saying they needed to be crowned and anointed, and that God was very much in favour of them being in charge, which is a canny thing to do if you want to stay in charge. Say, yeah, no, there's a huge omnipotent supreme being and he's on my side.
Yeah.
But it's, yes, it started with...
You can tell there's just so much flavour here.
Yes.
In terms of like the
Yes.
people, like this Billy did this, and then it's almost like gossip, like historic gossip.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. It's like, I want to know all the juicy details of these people from the past.
Yes.
That is very much a big part of the ESFJ.
It is. You know, they can be, you know, gossipy with contemporary people. But, you know,
Well,
I'd
they
say this
just
is a
want
much better
to
way of
know.
doing it.
They just want to know every aspect of a person's life. I mean, you know, I have a friend that she's an ESFJ, and we email one another, and she can't get enough about what I'm doing in my life. I cannot give her enough detail to satisfy her. I try my best.
Yeah.
I did this today. I ate this. Well, where did you eat it? Where did you go to eat? You know.
At what time?
At what time? Like, I can never give her enough to satisfy her. And I find it funny because, you know, I'm always saying that to you, right? Like, I did my best. I gave her an email filled with as much detail as I could. And she always will come back with probably 10 more questions, things, of course, I forgot or left out. And
It's all about, like, that combination, though. It's like...
yes.
all these little details make the experience for her,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes.
So, like, you know, if you got there at 7:15, that makes a difference.
It does.
You know, compared to getting there at 7:30.
Right.
Because then it's like, well, it's a bit later, and
she
of course I'll
makes
be a bit more
sure-
tired, and then, you know, that's part of the experience, and
exactly.
it's almost like a dish.
It means something.
all
And
these
I
different
guess-
elements.
Right. And I think it means something. Like, the details are meaningful. Because you're exactly right. She will tell me when she goes somewhere, and I pulled into the parking lot at 7:25, and she'll put that in her email. So it's not that she is demanding of details from me. She also gives me all the details of her life. Every single thing. You know, I went to lunch with this person, and this is what we talked about. It was great conversation, she always says. We had great conversation. And I had this dish, and I didn't like this dish. I had it before, but they did something at the restaurant. They changed the recipe, and it doesn't taste the same as it has, you know, every time I've had it in the past. I mean, it's like information overload. So they're very interested in people and in the details of their lives. So for David Mitchell, this whole interest in history, I mean, he's turned this into a great vocation, really, because he has the knowledge and then he can poke fun at it all.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen Fry's exactly the same. I think he's
Yes.
more into Greek history and stuff like that. But, yeah, there's, like, flavour to look for in books for
Right.
these particular types. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you knew that actually the Romans invaded Celtic Britain and then became the Romano-British, and then, when they left, technically they did devolve back to Celts.
All right.
I suppose he's not wrong, really. Okay,
No.
3, 2, 1, go.
Fights. Fights in the mud.
I mean, a big fight, I suppose, is what a lot of people will alight on at school as being the sort of, I suppose, the foundation of what we think of as the monarchy, which is 1066, the Battle of Hastings, all that sort of stuff. It's an incredibly important event for many of those reasons, but you all know far more about this than I do. So why was 1066 so important?
Well, it changed the people who ran the country. It came at, you know, what turned out to be the end of what we call the Anglo-Saxon era, and the Anglo-Saxons hadn't had an easy ride. They'd had to deal with the Vikings, but they pretty much sort of had dealt with the Vikings, and the Kingdom of England grew out of the Anglo-Saxon response to the Vikings, and their heptarchy was overthrown, really. But then they got together, and by 1066, there you've got England with an Anglo-Saxon king, an Anglo-Saxon monarchy, super sorted. But then William the Conqueror invaded, and he wasn't called that then, so they didn't know that they needed to worry. And he took over, and he really took over. He claimed to be the legitimate king. He claimed that Edward the Confessor, who was the king before Harold of Hastings, had said he can be king. We don't know if he'd said that. He might have done. But whether he did or not, William did something that Edward didn't have in mind, which is entirely replace the Anglo-Saxon ruling class. So it's a big change. Everyone who's in charge of anything, so anyone who we might have heard of now, because obviously most people leave no records at that time, is essentially dead or out.
Yeah, this is essentially where the aristocracy become French, of all things.
Can we please stick?
It's definitely a dark time
of the video. I think for me, if we can prove one thing on this channel, if we can set the record straight of one thing on this channel, is that the SFJs are incredibly undervalued in the MBTI consensus.
Yes.
And we saw it the other day going to some popular YouTuber who makes content, and on all the lists of people representing all the types, the shortest lists were the SFJs.
Yep. And it's ironic because there's definitely some ESFJs out there that are interested in this stuff.
Well, not only that, more so that there are interesting SFJs in the world, and that they can be academics, and they can be intellectuals, and they can be comedians, and they can be authors, and they can be all these things.
The thing is, like, why wouldn't they?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
This is their...
Yes.
This
it
is
makes
their
complete
thing.
sense to us, right? Why wouldn't they succeed? Why wouldn't we see them among some of the most successful people out there? They have it all figured out.
Yeah, they've got it all wrong. Like, they see...
Yes.
Intuition as a sort of cure-all for anything you want to do. And it's absolutely the opposite. That's sensation.
Yes.
Sensation gives you the details. Sensation gives you the thrill of the experience. It's all sensation. Senses are so much more robust than us.
They have what they need in this world to succeed. They are given the support. They are understood in that way.
Yeah, they're accepted.
They're accepted.
Recognized.
Yes, and good for them. And I'm happy for them because we need them in this world. To support our project, please comment, like, and subscribe. We want to encourage a dialogue in the comments, so substantiated disagreement is welcome. Check out the playlist for this type and our recommended video below. If there's someone you want us to type, please leave a comment for us. Or you can look into our fast track system to find out how you can get your favorite people typed sooner.